Welcome everybody to the 2024 Essay Writing Bootcamp. Thank you for joining us today. The goal of these sessions are for them to be somewhat interactive. So please use the chat feature to say hello. Thank you, Elizabeth, jumping in first. Go ahead and say hello and let us all know where you're from. We currently have 27 students in the room. I imagine we'll get up to 30, maybe even 40, but it's a small enough group for us to get to know each other. And this is a 3-session camp. So this is a nice opportunity to get to know your peers and see who else is planning to apply to the United States. Education USA is a U.S. Department of State network of more than 400 international student advising centers. We have 2 advising centers here in Canada, and I'm joined by my colleague Rachel, who's going to jump on and say hello.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Rachel. I'm the Education USA advisor based in Vancouver, BC, and I help support students located in Western Canada. And I believe, this is my email address on the slide. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me after this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And my name's Jenica Heim, and I am the Education USA advisor for Eastern Canada. Our dividing line is Ontario and Manitoba. So Manitoba and West is Rachel's, and Ontario and East is mine. You can learn more about the Education USA network at educationusa.state.gov. And for Canadians specifically, we have our own website, educationusacanada.ca. We also really recommend that students check out our social media. In particular, this is our link to follow on Instagram. Every Tuesday, I post admissions tips at 4 p.m. Eastern time, or approximately around that time. And you can follow to learn more about that. We also feature student stories and scholarships and other things. We also have a Facebook and a Twitter. That information will be at the end of the slideshow today. We will also be throwing polls out throughout. So as an example, here's one. What's been your favorite Olympic sport to watch so far? So I just opened that poll and I realized that one that was maybe open previously, I'll open it again. Let's see if I can do that. So you can go ahead, that should have flashed on your screen, and you can indicate what has been your favorite sport to watch during the Paris Olympics. I've been enjoying the Olympics quite a bit, and someone just put down water polo. The US is playing Australia right now. Very close game. We'll have to check in on that later. Soccer, I love the soccer. Agree. Swimming, track, phenomenal. All right, you're all paying attention too. So as we see who's here today, we have people from Ontario, Quebec, BC. I'm sure someone from Alberta's got to be here. Make sure you shout out where you're from. So this is designed to be a 3-session boot camp. Why? Because essay writing is a process, and the goal of this is to kickstart that process. So today we're going to talk about what the essay is, why you write it, what your options are, how it works within the totality of your application. I'm also going to introduce the brainstorming exercise to you, which then you will have homework. The goal will be to complete the brainstorming exercise before the next session. And there'll be 2 sessions next week on Tuesday and Thursday at the same time. Now, most of you should have signed up for this using a link for the series. And when you signed up for the series, you'll get emails for each individual event with the specific link. You can always go back to that series landing page to watch the recordings of sessions that you miss, or to get the link to the next session. And you should be getting emails throughout with this information. At the end of the session, I can post that link again to make sure that you all have it. Today's session will be a lecture style session, but in the upcoming sessions, there is going to be some interactivity, and I will be asking students if they'd like to share their microphones, not their cameras, but their microphones, as we can do some interaction around the brainstorming activity. And so at the beginning of the session, I will ask people who would like to share or not share. And then those folks will be given access to their microphones, and you'll be able to participate in that way. Every session is recorded, and so you can always go back and watch it again. Recordings are emailed to you afterwards. I already hinted to today's agenda, why an admissions essay, followed by reviewing more closely the essay prompts. Then we're going to do a Common App deep dive. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Common App webpage. I'm going to walk you through that with a screen share and highlight some things that are going to help get you started. We will then talk about what our 4-step approach to essay writing is and head right into the brainstorming and setting up that activity for next time. As an overview, this is our timeline to applying to the United States. So everyone that's here is hopefully in the process of applying, actively applying this fall in order to enroll next fall in 2025. If you are earlier on in the process than that, you can hang out if you'd like. Feel free to listen, but you should not start writing your essay a year or two in advance of your actual application process, okay? This is for students who are going to be starting grade 12 this fall, or if you're in Quebec, potentially second year of CEGEP. That's who this is for, okay? So your timeline is August, applications open. Most applications open. That's right now. So that's why we are doing this. You're getting a jump on it. Congratulations to all of you for doing that. Great job. Some of the earliest deadlines are as early as September or beginning of November, depending on the type of application you're completing. If there's anybody here in the group who is applying for performing arts, for example, some of those pre-screening deadlines are as early as September or October. If you think you might apply early action or early decisions, some of those deadlines are as early as October 15th or November 1st. So that's already coming up in 2 months. It's pretty quick. So if you are aiming for those deadlines, then working on the application now is essential. If you're applying for regular deadlines, the earliest ones might be in November. But in the United States, there's plenty of universities with deadlines in January or February, or even rolling deadlines where you can apply well into the spring and early summer of 2025 for the fall of 2025, right? So in the US, it ranges a lot depending on where it is you want to apply. So speaking of where it is you want to apply, let's go ahead and open another poll. What universities are you planning to apply to? Now, this is a very important question because it is going to help me have a bit of an understanding of where you're applying so that I can be a little more specific as we move through the information here. So why an admissions essay? It's an important question, right? Basically, you start reviewing all of the admissions information for U.S. universities. And if you're not having to write any essays for your Ontario schools, you may be wondering, what is the purpose of this? We're going to start by talking about what are all the admissions requirements that you might encounter. And then from there, we will hone in on the purpose of the essay. So for every U.S. university, you will need to fill out an application. The most common application is called the Common App, and a lot of our series is really going to be focused on that main Common App essay. That is because the Common Application is so common that there's more than 1,000 schools that use it, U.S. universities that use it, and most students are likely going to be filling out that application. UC, MIT, Georgetown, and many other universities do have their own application systems. However, some of them use the same prompts as Common App and some do not. And so we are going to review some of the other most commonly used questions and some of these other applications. Application fees themselves for each university can range between $30 and $100. Some can be slightly more. There are also fee waivers available at many universities, and some universities even just have free applications. So the range is actually $0 to like $150, but pretty commonly you'll be more in that $30 to $100 space per school. You will need to have official transcripts from your grade 9, or if you're in Quebec, secondary 3, or until the time that you apply. So these documents need to be coming from your current guidance counselor, who will upload them into the Common Application System or send them directly to the university. Some schools will allow students to self-report their grades as part of the application process, and the official transcripts aren't sent until later when the student enrolls. If your original documents are in French or another language, they will need to be accompanied by an English translation. As far as standardized tests are concerned, each university will have a policy around SAT and ACT. These are tests that are testing your grammar and reading comprehension, as well as your math usage. That's math concepts up to grade 11. And since COVID, a lot of schools have dropped their requirement for an SAT or ACT. More than 2,000 universities in the United States are test optional. Now, of course, that is a lot. There are about 3,300 universities in the US, so we can say that this is around 2/3. It means that there's a full 1/3 of universities that if you want to apply there, you will need to submit an SAT or ACT. So on this first slide, essentially everything here is an application requirement that you will encounter during the process. Every school has an application. Every school will require some sort of grade report as you apply, and every school will have some standardized testing policies. And if you are a non-native English speaker, or you haven't been learning in English for more than 2 or 3 years, then you will need to take an English language proficiency test, such as TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. As we move to the second slide, these application requirements are now the requirements that you would see in a more holistic review. So some universities will have one of these requirements, many of these requirements, all of these requirements. It really depends. And a lot of it has to do with how selective the university is. The more and more selective a school is, the more likely it is that you will need to complete more and more requirements. What is a selective university? Okay, let's go ahead and go into that question where, let's see if we have some responses from which universities are you planning to apply to? I haven't seen any come. The poll didn't pop up on my screen. Oh, okay. Well, I have someone saying that they're interested in Chicago, Brown, NYU. Okay, those are examples of selective universities, right? Ones that maybe only take somewhere between 2% to 15% of any student that applies. Usually they're going to be private schools that are smaller, so they have smaller class sizes and a smaller overall student body. For the larger the school, typically it starts to become less and less selective. And then you have like maybe some regional universities, ones that are a little bit easier to get into. The less selective it is, the less likely it is you'll need to write an essay or do any of the things on this slide. So recommendation letters, if a school requires them, it might be as few as 1 or as many as 3 required. And then there could be additional that students are allowed to send. Anything that is optional is something that is not required to submit, but if you have it, you can submit it. So usually you're looking at 1 guidance counselor letter, 1 or 2 teacher letters from one of your core classes, and up to 3 other letters. And so those can be teachers, additional teachers from electives or non-core classes, coaches, supervisors for jobs or volunteer work, a religious leader, essentially any other adult or mentor you've had in your life who can say really nice things about you. Essays and writing supplements, it's why you're here. So as part of the process, many schools will require a main personal essay that is up to 650 words that will go to every university that's within the same application. So for the Common App, you write one essay and it goes to all the schools you're applying to through that application. And then you might be required to write some university-specific supplements. On top of that, there's other types of requirements or potential optional items that you can include, such as the option to have an interview or to upload a resume. If you are an engineer, you might be able to provide a maker portfolio. Or if you're a scientist, you might be able to give a research abstract on some research you're doing. If you're an art student, if you are planning to apply to an arts program, it would be required to have an addition or portfolio, but many schools, even if you're not applying in the arts, might allow those things to be optional as well. So it's something important to look into. If, say, you are very accomplished in music, but you're not going to be studying that, you might still be able to include that information on your application. And it might also require another essay. All right. So as we move along, the admissions essay itself. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty details of why that's part of this process. Now, your GPA are numbers. Your letter of recommendation is other people talking about you. But your admissions essay, as part of the holistic review of the student, is an opportunity to hear your voice. This is the one place where you get to provide context, where you get to provide your point of view on yourself. So it's actually a pretty important part of the overall application. We get to learn the unique qualities and or experiences that you have had as a student. And as I've already mentioned, that for the less selective institutions, it's likely that you might not even need to write the essay. So it's important that when you are narrowing down your list of schools, you see if this is even a requirement. I would say even for schools where it's not a requirement, it's not a bad idea to write it anyways. Oftentimes it's optional. I think especially as an international student, it's really nice to introduce yourself a bit to the admissions committee. It helps them make a positive decision in your favor. For more selective institutions beyond the personal essay, you can imagine that you will need to write additional supplements. And we will have a whole session number 3, where we will really dive into the supplemental essays. 2 additional optional essay prompts are also available. So in the Common App, there is an essay related to COVID or other, they call it community disruption. So if you've been affected pretty deeply by a wildfire or a tornado or something like that, beyond COVID, all those things are kind of lumped into that one 250 word essay. So if you've had a community disruption such as that, that has taken a toll on your grades, your extracurriculars, what have you, you have a short essay that you can contribute about that. And then lastly, there's another 650 words where you can write anything you want. So some students will write a completely additional essay in that space. Some will bullet point some information they feel was left out of the main application. So just know there's a bit of a safety valve of 650 words so that when you're done with your whole application, you have a little bit of additional space if you need it. But you don't have to use it if you don't want to. The next thing we're going to do is review essay prompts for the Common App and other applications that you may be using. As I'm going to head back over to the poll if I can see. I only see one person who responded, but they're also pretty highly selective schools so far. MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon. So far it's mostly Ivies and highly selective schools. So this is going to be pretty relevant. I already mentioned the Common application is the one that likely you'll all fill out. There's another application you might come across called the Coalition application. There's 170 universities that use this application. Essentially, all these universities also use the Common App. So I don't find that many students in Canada choose Coalition. In the United States, a lot of nonprofits are linked to the Coalition application, and they have a lot of specific scholarships and things geared towards American students. So you can use that application if you'd like to, if all your universities are using it. But I find most students track towards Common App. It's also one guidance counselors tend to be a little more familiar with here. The University of California. So there are 9 University of California campuses, and they have their own application that you can find at apply.universityofcalifornia.edu. They have their own writing assignment, which is actually updated. It's slightly different from the year before. So we'll go over that in a moment. Applied Texas has their own application for their public school system, although a lot of Texas schools do use the Common App. Applied Texas has 60 public universities as well as 52-year colleges. They do have some different application essays within that app. Some other systems like SUNY is the State University of New York, have their own applications as well. However, SUNY's application mirrors the Common App when it comes to the essay. So there's not really a different essay assignment there. To dive a little deeper into the essay types you can expect in each one, essentially most applications are going to have a word limit of 650. Applied Texas goes up to 750. So you can see a pretty standard cap. The minimum is for 2 applications is 500. Common App doesn't have a minimum. Their minimum, I think, is 250. It's pretty low. But essentially targeting between 500 and 650 words is makes a really good essay. It's about 5 paragraphs or page and a half. So that's what you can prepare for, and that should work for a lot of different schools. University of California and MIT have their own writing assignments that include shorter individual prompts. So it's a little closer to what supplementary essays look like, but those are the main essays. They don't have a longer statement. And supplemental essays do, of course, vary by university. Many of them are, why do you want to apply here? Why do you want to study this major? What will you contribute to our community? And we'll talk about strategies to tackle those in session number 3. Now, I'm not going to read every single one of these. You can go to the websites of each individual application to do that on your own. Instead, what I want to do is pull out the themes so that you can start seeing what these applications hold in common and what types of things you might be asked to present or talk about in these main essays. Okay, so in the Common App, you can choose from 7 different prompts, and the prompts cover the following things. Talking about your background, interest, or a talent that you have, speaking about a challenge, a setback, or failure, what you did about that, challenging a belief or idea, how has gratitude affected or motivated you, a period of personal growth you've had, all-consuming topic, idea, or concept, or lastly, any topic of your choice. Okay, so those are the main themes that you would be tackling. And as you could probably tell, you can write just about any essay about yourself and it will fit into one of these prompts. And that's part of the point, is that it's allowing for you to cover a really wide range of human experience through these overall prompts that are presented. Now, if we head to the Coalition essay, they do have slightly different prompts. Now, think about it. Both of this school and, this application and the previous one have a submit an essay on any topic of your choice. So if you like one of these Coalition essay prompts better, you could, choose it as your prompt for number 7 on the Common App, so there you go. It allows you to choose your favorite. Tell a story from your life. What interests or excites you? When have you had a positive impact on others? So that's a slightly different one. That positive impact one is not exactly the same as what's on the Common App? Was there a time when a belief of yours was questioned? That's the same as a former Common App question, but it's not a question there anymore. And what advice would you give to a sibling or a friend who's going through a hard time, essentially? So it's a different take on the obstacle question. On the previous one, it's more about what did you do when you faced an obstacle setback? What did you learn? And on the coalition app, you've got how would you provide advice to someone else based on what you've learned through an obstacle? So there's a lot of overlaps, but just slightly different wording and direction. Now, for the University of California, it used to be that there was 8 prompts to choose from, and you choose 4 of them, each essay 350 words max. Now, what's changed is now there is one question that's required for every single student to answer, and it's actually a new question. This question didn't exist before. It basically took away the question they used to have about what's a topic that interests you, what's an academic topic that interests you. So instead of that question, now the required question is, please describe how you've prepared for your intended major, including your readiness to succeed in your upper division courses once you enroll at the university. So this used to be, what is an academic subject that inspires you, which is a little bit fluffier. Now it's very, very specific and really points to the student needing to demonstrate their drive towards a specific subject and how they want to, what experience you have in that subject and how you want to keep working towards that once you're at the university. So this is a big change, actually, for the UC to have such a specific question like this. The other questions haven't changed. 1 through 7, you can pick 3 of these to respond to. And again, I'll just summarize based on the bolded words here, describing a leadership experience you have, how you express your creative side, your greatest skill or talent, a significant educational opportunity or something that you've worked to overcome, your most significant challenge, how do you make your school a better community, and just generally what makes you believe you stand out as a strong candidate. So again, hopefully you're seeing some things. The word challenge came up again, skill, talent came up again, leadership. So a lot of these, community, you're going to see these words repeated throughout essay prompts. When it comes to apply Texas, there's only 3 options. And the first one is tell us your story. I like that one. It's just very broad, but specifically they ask you to dip into opportunities or challenges you've experienced. So again, same sort of thing we've already seen. Second one, an identity, interest, or talent that you'd like to share. And then lastly, this one's pretty cool. You've got a ticket in your hand. Where will you go? What will you do? What will happen when you get there? That's kind of a fun one. Again, if you're not sure which prompt to answer in the Common App or Coalition, that could be one that you decide to write in. So to summarize, what did we see? Challenges and setbacks, periods of growth, giving back to your community, an activity that's meaningful to you that you want to share with the person who's reading your essay, a meaningful person or interaction that you have that has somehow shaped your life in typically a positive way, something important about your background, your talents or skills, and essentially anything else you want. Besides the main essay, you will also have supplementary essays, many of which have similar types of questions about leadership, community, diversity, identity. So even if you don't tackle one of these topics in your main essay, you might find yourself tackling one of these topics in the supplementals. So as you're brainstorming, which of course we're going to talk about in a minute, as you're brainstorming, you might find that you need to, that you should be reflecting on all these different topics. Because even if it's not the main one you choose to write about, you will probably need to write about leadership, for example. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is our Common App deep dive. So essentially, I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to just walk you through a few parts of the Common App. Now I'm going to go back to the group here for a moment and ask, have you opened a Common Application account? And there we go. So go ahead and let me know, have you opened a Common Application account? So this will help me understand a little bit more about where you're at. And before I share my screen, I'm going to give just a little bit of information about the Common App. We already mentioned that it has more than 1,000 US member schools. You can get to the Common App through commonapp.org. If you go to the handout section here in this room, there are links to every application that we are talking about today, including the Common App, the Coalition, Study Texas, or Apply Texas, University of California. And if there's any other app that you are personally going to be working through, you can always let me know about that, and we can deep dive on that as well. The Common App is a nonprofit organization. It also has member universities from around the world. It has 4 Canadian schools you can apply to, but also more than 50 universities internationally. So it's a great gateway to apply to more schools there. And as a fun fact, Canada yields the 3rd highest number of international applicants. So lots of Canadians using the Common App. Right, we're fairly split between who has opened and not yet opened a Common App account. So for the 40% of people who haven't opened one yet, I will tell you, if you can get a new tab open, go ahead and put commonapp.org into that tab, and you can follow along and start your account right now. We can do it together. Now, if you already have opened a Common App account and you did so before August 1st and you log back in after August 1st, you're going to be asked about rolling over your account. So every year, August 1 is when the new Common App launches. Many of the questions remain the same, particularly the questions that are in the Common App tab. And so all of the information, if you entered stuff there, that will roll over or basically stay in your account. The things that do not roll over, if you put anything in the My Colleges tab, like if you started entering supplemental essay information, that's all going to be deleted, because universities year over year oftentimes change a good number of their questions in the Common App, and they refresh all of that on August 1st. Also, if your teachers already uploaded letters of recommendation for you, when you roll over your account, those will no longer be in the system. You will need to reinvite teachers, reinvite a guidance counselor if you've already done it before, and they will need to upload those letters again. So just be aware, if you were trying to be proactive before August 1st, you will need to repeat these steps. There's also an area where you can add advisors along with your other recommenders, and that's where you can add either myself or Rachel, depending on who your advisor is, and we can help by looking over your application and giving you feedback. So I'll walk you through where those things are so that this makes a lot more sense to you. Let me share my screen. Okay, so when you create your login, most of you are probably going to be first-year students. If you're in high school, you're definitely a first-year student. But if you're currently a college student, then you, especially if you've done 2 years at a college, then you might be a transfer student. If you're not sure, definitely get in touch with me. I can help you out with that. So I've already created an account, so I'm just going to include my login information as I get started here. And but you'll find there'll be a few questions that you'll need to answer before you get into your Common App page. Mine, of course, is a practice account, but yours is going to look just like this. And this area, when you first get started, will be blank. You can see there's multiple tabs across the top here. The Common App tab is really the main deal, right? The Common App, the goal of this is you fill all this information out one time, and it goes to every school you apply to. You can apply to up to 20 schools in the Common App. So say you apply to 20 universities. You only need to fill out this information about your personal profile, your education, any tests you've taken, your activities list, all of that one time. This is also where you're going to find information about the personal essay. When you add schools to your application, you will see here which ones require the essay, which some people already mentioned Yale and University of Chicago as schools they might want to apply to. And then you'll see if there's any universities who do not require the essay as part of their application process. If all your schools are in the not required category, then hey, you don't necessarily need to write an essay. It gives you the information about the prompt here, up to 650 words with a minimum of 250. You are going to choose which prompt, and then you are going to copy and paste your essay into here. I highly recommend you write your essay in another location, and then you paste it into here when you are ready to go. There used to be an integration in here where you could share your file directly from Google Drive. Unfortunately, that does not exist anymore. I mentioned that there were the optional essays related to community disruptions and another essay on about 650 words. You would put those here. So you can click yes if you plan to do it, and there goes your essay, or no if you do not plan to write those essays. So those are the main writing portions that go to every school you apply to in the Common App. You need to add every school that you would like to apply to in the college search area. So one of the schools that somebody mentioned was NYU. So we'll put New York University. Now, just make sure, like, don't just write New York and look how many schools there are in New York. You could easily choose the wrong university if you're not, if you're not doing it properly. Oh, my favorite is anything with Washington in it. George Washington. You write down Washington, look how many different schools come up. Okay, so do make sure that you are you're adding the correct school. That's pretty important. All right, so we're going to do New York University. New York has a Y, not a T. New York University. And then you add it. And then all those schools will end up on your My Colleges list. So like I mentioned, if you started putting stuff in here and answering the individual questions, then unfortunately, after August, if you did that before August 1st, all that stuff is not going to be there anymore, and you will need to do it again. When you look at each individual university, you will have email addresses directly to admissions, very useful if you have admissions questions. You have the deadlines that you could choose, the different options. You have links directly to the admissions information on the website. Use that, understand it. There is information about financial aid, which is really important. And then you have, look at this. What are the writing requirements? So you will have the Common App essay required, big red exclamation point. And then there are going to be additional college questions. In this case, it says that that NYU doesn't have a writing supplement. Now, I would flag that as, don't take this as face value, because sometimes there are questions that pop up that are short answers that you want to treat as an essay based on how you answered a question, right? So the most important thing to do is to get into the question area itself and to begin answering some of these questions about where you want to apply and what your major is going to be. And then you will see if there's any other essays that sort of pop up that you need to answer. Now, in this particular one, you can see in the writing section, there is this optional essay writing. Should you answer this? 100%. NYU is a very selective university. You have another opportunity to answer a question. I highly recommend that you take the time to do this. This is a max 250 word essay. Look at what we've got. I'm sure we're not going to be surprised. You're already learning about what to expect here. What personal experiences or challenges have shaped you? Oh, they're talking about bridge builders. So there's a bunch of things about bridge builders and contributing to community, right? Universities love when you can speak to what experiences you have both in your community and what you will bring to their community. So how have you been a bridge builder in your community? What have you done to build bridges between diverse groups. I mentioned that earlier as well. So these are all really classic questions that you can pick from, and you will likely write similar essays for other schools. Now, I had also flagged that in the recommender area, you can add either Rachel or I as an advisor. So I'm going to show you really quickly how to do that. First, you have to complete the FERPA authorization. This always confuses people a little bit. FERPA relates to two things. Okay, so it's going to ask you to basically agree to both things. Oh, it was on. Okay, they changed how this looks. So essentially, it's saying that you are putting your personal information in this application, and you're giving the Common App the right to send that information to universities. Number one, yes, that's important, of course, right? We need them to give the information on. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is about waiving your right to review the confidential letters of recommendation. It used to ask you yes or no, and now essentially what it's saying is, as you fill this out, you are waiving your rights. And it's really important because it says so right here. Waiving your right lets college knows that you do not intend to read your recommendation letters, which helps reassure that the college letters are candid and truthful. So this is very important to waive the right. Now, if your counselor or your teacher on their own behalf decides to hand you the letter, especially because they wrote nice things and they're proud of it and they want you to see it, that's fine. You're not breaking any rules. But what you're saying is through this system, through Common App, you are waiving your right to, oh, there we go. We're progressing through. Sorry, they just changed the formation a bit. You want to select, I waive my right to review all recommendation and supporting documents within the Common App system. This is best practice when you're applying. So please go ahead and do that. If you're following along right now, you can go ahead and do that right alongside. You've got to put today's date and your name, and then you save and close. Okay, next. Once you get through that part, you will see where you get to invite your recommenders. You only need to invite your recommenders one time. So when you invite your guidance counselor, they are going to show up under every school that needs it, that needs the guidance counselor there. The teachers, you can invite as many teachers as you like. And then what you'll do is you'll kind of select them with various check marks on whose letters are going to be given. So for this particular school, you can send up to 3 letters, but 0 are required. And then lastly, here's where you add the advisor. So this is where you can invite an advisor. You go ahead and you add email address. So if Rachel's your advisor, you put her email address in, you write her first name, you write her last name, and then you hit invite, okay? But then the next thing that's really important after you do that is you need to hit this button, enable preview. If you don't enable the preview, all you've done is shared your name with her essentially and your school list. If you enable preview, now at this point, anything that's in your Common App can be reviewed by your advisor. So you need to click enable preview, click I understand what that means, and then enable the preview. Of course, Rachel and myself keep all of your information confidential. The goal of sharing it with us is so that we can help review your application for accuracy and feedback. The last thing I want to point out is one of my favorite features in the Common App that I think is probably incredibly underutilized and people don't realize exists. It's this area called application requirements. So if you click on this, it's going to open another tab. And you have 2 different options. First, any school that you've already added to your school list is going to show up here on the side alongside all of the deadlines available, how much the fee is, which you can see is different for some schools. University of Arizona, it's $80 for US students, it's $85 for international students, right? So some schools are different. You can see some schools we mentioned are as low as $30, whereas other schools are maybe as high as around 85, 90 is pretty typical. You'll see what the standardized testing policy is, which is super important because you can see some schools are never required, it's test flexible, or maybe you have to submit it in order to apply. So you have a lot of different options here to track your school, and you can download this requirements grid. So super useful. Secondarily, you can do one of all the universities available in the Common Application. A couple of fun things you can do with that. You can sort it by who has a $0 application fee. Maybe you want to add in a few more schools that you can apply to for free. Maybe you want to choose ones that have a never required testing policy. So you can sort by who needs and doesn't need an SAT score. And then you can go from there. And the other one you could do is deadlines. So if we get later into the year and you want to add more schools in, you can see, okay, who has later or earlier deadlines. So you can see there's the earliest deadlines you might encounter in the Common Application. Ohio Dominican has a November 1st deadline. University of Washington has classically a November 15th deadline. Oberlin has December 1st. So you can see some of the earliest deadlines are coming up already pretty quickly. That's it for our Common App walkthrough. Now, before we get into the brainstorming session, I'm really happy to take some questions. And it looks like maybe a few came through while I was talking. So a student from Quebec asked, should I apply as a first-year student or a transfer student? So most likely you will apply as a first-year student, and your second-year credits will be reviewed for transfer. However, it is important that you reach out to each university that you're applying to and ask them how they would like for you to apply. I have encountered some universities that want CEGEP students to apply as transfer students. Okay, so unfortunately, each website for each school isn't going to have very specific information for students from Quebec. It's usually something that you have to reach out and ask more questions about. Now, if you know what schools you're applying to, you can share that list with me. There's some that just from working with students from Quebec, there's plenty where I know the answer to that question, and I could potentially help you there. Some other questions. Does every teacher who writes a recommendation letter need to be added to the application? Yes, they do. So the way that it works is you will ask your teacher verbally first about the recommendation letter. Then you go into the application, you add their email address, they'll receive an email, and they'll upload their letter. They only need to do that one time, and then that letter can be selected for any university that you have in the Common App. Now, if you're applying to other schools that are not in the Common App and do require letters, that teacher will need to send that letter separately into any other application. For example, if you're applying to Georgetown or if you're applying to MIT, for example, are two schools that have their own applications and also require letters. Let me see if there's a few other questions I can answer. Now is a great time to ask more admissions questions before I get into the essay writing activity that you'll be doing. Is there a benefit to early decision versus regular decision? Now, there can be. It really depends on who you are as a student, and it depends on what schools you're applying to. So early decision is a binding decision policy. And so depending on the institution, it could give you a slight advantage to getting in, specifically for smaller liberal arts colleges, and particularly if you have need. So for a needs-based school that's needs aware and you have need, applying early decision is probably the best policy to go for. But just know that when you apply early decision, it is binding. So you only do that for a school that you really want to apply to. For schools that are needs blind, applying early to me doesn't have as much of a weight to it. So again, it really depends on the school. So feel free to reach out to your Education USA advisor, either myself or Rachel, to ask more questions about whether or not early is a good option for you. You also need to be ready to apply early. Most students who apply early have like their essays and most things ready by mid-September. So we're getting close to that. If your application is still like not complete by the beginning of October, early might not be your best choice. Another question, should we create a separate new email for the Common App account? There's no reason to do that. I mean, you should it should go to an email that you check. The Common App's going to have important updates and information. So if you want a new email because you currently have one that has a, it's not professional, then yeah, sure, create a new email. But most students will use their student email, which is totally fine. Up to you. So let's get back in the chat. The difference between early action and early decision is that early action is a non-binding policy. So you can apply to a school early action, and if you get in, you can still apply to different universities. So some public schools in the US have early action policies, and you can still apply to many other schools. I would say, especially for the non-restrictive early action schools, if your application is ready and polished by those time, that's a good idea to get in for those early action deadlines. So like a University of Michigan or a school like that. Yeah, absolutely. But any school that has a restrictive early action policy where you just need to pick one, it's going to mean that you have to decide which in just one school you might apply to early action or early decision. All right, we've got another question coming up. Where would I add your email? So again, you go over to the I know it's a little hard. I'll share the screen one more time because it can feel a little confusing on where you go for that. So I'll just jump right back into the Common App really quickly. So yeah, most people are like, where do I add the recommenders again? So you have to go to the My Colleges tab. You need to have already added some schools to your colleges list using the college search. And then when you click on any individual school, you go to recommenders in FERPA. Once you answer all the FERPA questions, as we talked about, that's when you can start inviting recommenders, and that's where you can add your advisor, like me or Rachel. Okay. All right. Any additional questions I can answer? Another good one coming through. Would it affect your application if you don't submit standardized test scores? With many universities going test optional, how else would they evaluate applications without relying on numerical values? So it depends on how holistic the school is. So part of the holistic admissions process is actually not relying too much on numerics. So the SAT for many universities is more of a confirmation than anything else. If you're applying to a highly selective university, let's take who's still test optional. Yale's still test optional, right? I have to double check which Ivies. I know Harvard's not anymore. Brown is, I don't think Brown is. No, Dartmouth isn't. Brown still is. I need to double check. But let's say Yale, okay? So basically, let's say you're applying to Yale and you submit a 1550 SAT score. All that is confirming that you're a strong student, and your grade should already, like, the grades are going to be more important than that information. I call it kind of a check mark, like, yep, good job. It's confirmation. It's not like, oh my God, the student did so well on the SAT. It's just not that interesting of a piece of information. Whereas all of that holistic stuff, your essays, the letters of recommendation, that's the stuff that actually helps you with acceptance to these universities, alongside your extracurriculars, your community service, and all the stuff that you do outside of your grades. So as far as all the things about you, your grades and your extracurriculars and all that is the most interesting. The SAT is a lot less interesting. Now, many universities still require the SAT, especially if they're using it for scholarshiping for any purposes around that, or if just in general they're a slightly less selective university, they can use it to kind of help easily sort students on maybe what their strengths are academically. But for the highly selective schools, it's, they're staying test optional because they're seeing that it wasn't making a huge impact on their decision making. If my school doesn't offer AP or IB classes, would schools care as long as my GPA is a 4.0? So it's important for your guidance counselor to provide information about what's available at your school. If you don't have AP or IB, that'll be in the school report. But if you're applying to really selective universities, you need to prove to them that you're doing something else to supplement and do something a little more academically rigorous. So if you're not getting that academic rigor through your studies, what clubs are you in? Are you pursuing academic rigor through, a math club or a science club or a Model UN? Or are you doing your own personal research? Or are you part of an internship that's really academically stimulating? So if you're not getting that rigorous academics through your school, then you need to kind of show what are the other ways that you're prepared to study at a highly academically rigorous university. All right, those were awesome questions that came through. We're now going to shift focus back to the essay writing and talk a little bit about the brainstorming activity. We're pretty on point to finish up in about an hour today rather than an hour and a half. I am booking each session for an hour and a half, particularly because in the upcoming sessions, they're with the opportunity to do a little more chit chat. I want to make sure that we're not cut off too early. But if we get done before an hour and a half, then, you get that. We'll just log off. That's easy. So the 4-step approach to essay writing is going to start with brainstorming. After you brainstorm, you're going to do another exercise called the themes and stories exercise. And from there, you will create an outline. So those are going to be 3 separate exercises that you'll be receiving throughout this boot camp. And then your final assignment will be to start writing your first draft. My favorite adage that I like to repeat when it comes to brainstorming is don't choose the prompt, let the prompt choose you. What I mean by this is students will often sit down and look, as we just did, look at all those prompts, read them through and say, okay, I want to write number 3. I want to write about the time that I challenged a belief. But then they sit there and they go, ooh, okay, what's a time I challenged a belief? And now you've boxed yourself in, as opposed to, it can be a little more useful to more widely brainstorm and then choose a prompt that best fits the experiences that you want to speak about. So there is a brainstorm activity. It's now available in the handout section. So I'm just sharing it now. So if you head over to handouts, you will find that. Print your brainstorming document if you can. My goal is for you to step away from digital devices during this. So, if you bring your phone and you end up looking at messages and you're on Snapchat, it's not going to help the creative juices as well as if you can put your phone aside, maybe get a little more primitive and just grab pieces of paper, pens. If you're somebody who likes colored pens or you have a whiteboard, if you're someone who likes to draw, however your brain works, this is a goal. The goal of this is to kind of access the other side of your brain, if you will. I think it's access the right side of your brain a little bit and not just focus on the need to formulate language in a specific way, but instead be a little more creative. Find a quiet space alone. It's summer. It's beautiful. We only have so many beautiful months in Canada. Get outside if you can. Be inspired by nature. What are you doing this weekend? If you can go sit in a park, just essentially the most important thing is to get away from the place where you usually do work. I don't want you, if you have a desk where you usually do homework, do not sit at that desk for this activity. That desk is going to tell you that it is time to work. And I want you to get to a space where you're doing, okay, I'm doing something different here. The brainstorm itself is not a, this is not what you're handing in as your essay to anybody in the admissions team, right? So this is something that you can access in whatever way feels creative to you or interesting to you. As you're brainstorming, make sure you write down bad ideas too. What I mean is, if you're answering a question and you're like, that's dumb to me, I know I'm not going to write an essay about that. Doesn't matter. Just write it down. Part of brainstorming is just free-flowing ideas, writing down everything that comes up for you, and loosening up that space for new ideas to come. Sometimes if you're spending time rejecting an idea, you're actually obsessing about it. So it's helpful to just write it down and move on. Try not to bring distractions such as your phone, a laptop, other people. Really try to set up an atmosphere that's going to be serene. And remember, whatever you write during this time is private. Like, you can share parts of your brainstorm if you would like to, but your full brainstorm is for you. So, what I recommend to students is, if you want to share a brainstorm with Rachel or myself, that's probably going to be an edited version of whatever you write. Make sure you have a first draft that's just for you. And then if you want to edit it down to kind of your top ideas, then that would be your shareable brainstorm after that. There's going to be questions like, what are you most proud of? What are some of the positive adjectives you and your friends would use to describe you? What is an interesting thing that you don't tell many people? What is something you care deeply about? So these types of big questions that'll hopefully make you think a little bit, and will hopefully be a fun activity to engage in. And the goal is to start with jotting down ideas and not to actually write an essay yet. So bullet points work well, word clouds, things that are more like the starts of ideas as opposed to starting to write full stories. Complete the document that we have. And like I said, you can, brainstorm somewhere else, different piece of paper. Then on the document, you can edit it down and answer as many questions as you want. There's a lot on there. You don't have to do all of them. You can delete some of them, but you can share your brainstorm portions with your advisor. So the brainstorm is available right now in the handout section. Somebody is asking if it can be in a different format. So I will very quickly upload a PDF format of the same document so that you all can access that. Hopefully that'll help you. Should that work? Will the PDF work for you? Save as PDF. So your homework is to complete the brainstorming exercise, and to really engage with this process, we recommend emailing it to your advisor. And again, your advisors are, I'm the Eastern advisor, so Ontario, Quebec, Atlantic provinces, and Rachel is the advisor for BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. So please make sure you send to the correct person. A couple other things that I would really like to highlight are our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. If you are using any social media, please follow us there. This again is our Instagram information, and use the website as well. We have really great resources and links and stuff there. And then finally, this is very exciting. We are launching a Discord server. I am brand new to Discord, but I do think that this is a place where it's going to be really great for us to keep the essay writing bootcamp and all this conversation going throughout our sessions. And then once this bootcamp is over, we can keep communicating using the Discord server, not just on essay writing, but we'll have other channels and other themes where we can talk about US admissions. I'm also going to put the essay writing bootcamp activities in the Discord. So if you didn't download it from the handouts in this moment, you can't find it, it'll be in the Discord server. All right, so here is the link for the Discord. So please join today. We will, throughout the fall, have guest speakers. So you can see these are some of the people who have been Education USA mentors in the past. And so we will have students such as these Canadians who are currently studying in the US host 1-hour sessions where they talk about different US admissions topics and campus life topics. Michael in the suit with the blue tie who goes to Cornell is already very excited to talk to you all. So I know he's signed up. So we're going to get a good number of these students and others to help lead discussion sessions. It's going to be a really great way to not just connect with each other, but connect with other Canadians studying in the States. So please join us there and add your voice. I will now upload the handout, the PDF handout, and please ask any additional questions that you have in the meantime. All right, there we go. PDF is available. All right, the PDF is now available. All right, thank you so much, everybody. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.